Today on the TMZ Podcast.
Welcome to the TMZ Podcast. Harvey Levin here.
Jamie here.
Derek here.
Okay, talking about all sorts of things. Kanye, and we're talking about the Parkland verdict and sentence. And we're going to talk about whether protesters...
My favorite.
Oh, I want to get into it.
My
Believe me, whether they should destroy works of art, masterpieces. But we're going to start with Anna Sorokin. This is really interesting. So look, I mean, they've done this huge Netflix documentary on her. Everybody knows about her. She's out of prison. She's in home confinement because ICE wants her out of the country. She's a German citizen who has overstayed her visa. And she thinks she deserves a second chance. She was on TMZ Live yesterday and really made her case that she has done her time, and she thinks that immigration should look at that and say, you know what, we're going to give you a whirl.
And it's like all about getting second chances. And I think people in America are just so fascinated with crimes, especially right now. So it was kind of like the perfect storm. I do feel remorseful about the things that I've done. I mean, I feel like I got a lot of time. It was my very first criminal offense, and it was nonviolent, but it is what it is.
I would be floored if you are persuaded by, I know her as Anna Delvey because that's what she presented herself to the world for a number of years
By the
while
way,
defrauding people.
She has not yet jettisoned the word Delvey.
Yes. She's still rocking it.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
Kind of smart.
She is very bright and dangerous, obviously, because she committed these crimes. Let's remember that these are crimes of deception over a number of years. Was she able to persuade you with her case to stay in the United States after committing these crimes of real moral turpitude? She should absolutely be removed from the country, in my mind. She has no basis for being
ruined
here.
people's lives.
Ruined
and
it.
the delusional
Guys,
thing is...
you're talking to me
Okay.
like
I was
said.
wondering.
Sure.
I thought a sympathetic ear was there because you
Well-
were like, we had her on TMZ Live, and what a lovely lady.
I didn't say that,
You
did
didn't.
I?
You didn't, but I was curious.
Okay, so let me ask you a question. We are talking about, immigration reform right now. We're letting, people come into the country in ways we haven't in the past. And part of this has to do with the very nature of our country about, opening it up to immigrants and whatnot. So sometimes immigrants cross the line and they make a mistake. Do you deport all of them? I'm just kind of...
Are we calling this a mistake?
Yeah. I don't think so. 21 Savage, also in an immigration crisis. I think he was pulled over, some drugs.
I think he was screwed.
I agree.
Yes.
That to me sounds like youthful indiscretion. The process should work to sort of allow people who make mistakes to be treated fairly in the process and may be allowed to stay here. Anna Sorokin did not make a mistake. She committed a fraud over a number of years and was only apprehended when it was discovered.
Okay.
She didn't come forward. And so those are the type of people we don't need in the country.
She did her time.
Yes.
And sometimes when people do their time, they learn. They actually become much better people.
Well, not interested. We have enough better people here. We're fine.
And you're big on, don't take a snapshot of someone's life as the totality of their life. And she may lead a fruitful, sort of law-abiding life after this. It just doesn't deserve to be in this country. If she was here on a visa and committed crimes within our borders, she needs to leave.
I also don't believe that she is a better person, though she keeps saying, I feel really bad. I'm like, no, you don't.
Okay,
You're
first
ready
of all,
for your podcast.
Stop the accent.
It was part and parcel of her fraud,
I
though,
feel
that
so
she
bad.
had
I know, but-
affectation in her voice.
But I got to tell you, the thing that just I agree with you on this, but
I know. I wish we could have some more
I know,
friction here,
but
but I feel like
what
we're all
really-
on the side of kicking Anna Delvey out of the country.
What really fascinates me is that I think Anna is set up for life. I think she is so notorious right now, and America is so messed up where that's what's celebrated, that she's going to have a podcast that's going to do
I will listen to that.
extremely well. She's probably going to write books. She's doing art now. She's actually pretty good,
Yes.
and she'll sell that. People will want that. They will covet it. They will pay a lot of money for it. She's
She's extremely bright, as you said.
In America
and
these
dangerous.
days, the more notorious, the better.
You're 100% right. She will be successful.
Okay, we're going to move on. Let's talk about the art thing, okay?
Oh, this makes me so mad. So two anti-fossil fuel protesters went in London's National Gallery and they threw soup on Van Gogh's sunflower
Tomato
painting.
soup, not a broth.
Tomato soup. So at first I was almost thinking, is this some sort of like Warhol?
That's
like,
exactly what I
I
thought.
had the same
That's
thought.
exactly
I'm like,
what
tomato soup on a Van Gogh. Yeah.
Right, and then they threw a picture of Marilyn at it.
No, but these two women, they're honestly children. These dumb kids. They're so young. So they go in, they throw the soup, they start yelling about.
They glue their hands
fossil-
to the
They
wall.
glue their hands. They take out 2 little glues, put it on their hands, rub it together, put it on the wall. First of all, idiots. What is that gonna do? All it's gonna do is hurt your skin in like 2 minutes. Then you're gonna have stuff on your hand for the rest of the day.
You're going to need nail polish remover and acetone.
You're
all
only
night.
hurting
Yeah.
yourself.
And so they got arrested, and they think they're making a point about fossil fuel, that now the cost. I can't even understand it, because on the one hand, I thought, okay, they're protesting the use of fossil fuel, but what they seem to be saying is we're protesting the cost of fossil fuel. So which is it? It's so muddled.
It's so muddled, and the protest itself has nothing
these people
to do with
these
climate
people
change.
are. I am all for protesting what we're not doing to save the planet.
Sure.
This is stupid.
Well, these
and
kids
it's not only
woke up
stupid,
thinking they were going to change the world.
but you know what they're doing? This is, if anybody's in the line on climate change, because look, people to the left to center are, for the most part, they're down with doing something radical to save the planet.
You're not trying to convince them.
It's the people right of center, and especially just right of center, where they might be on the line. This pushes them the wrong way.
Of course it does. It alienates them. This is a sort of lawlessness that you think the hippies on the left are wacky. You're never going to convince them with this kind of display. And protests used to be related to the mission. Why are we destroying a Van Gogh? What did Van Gogh think about climate change? Nothing.
Let me give you an example. Do you remember when, I think it was PETA that threw flour on Kim Kardashian when she was wearing the coat?
Yes.
Look, you may disagree with what they did, but the fact is, that statement directly aligned with the message.
100%. They used to throw paint, remember, on fur coats. Then it was flour. There was a nexus. I don't condone it.
When we first started TMZ, there was this fantastic story where there was a silent auction where you could have lunch with Beyonce. And there were all these people who were bidding, and the winning person, it was a woman, goes to this fancy restaurant. I forget which one. It was a very well-known restaurant in New York. Sits down with Beyonce and has a secret recording, and she's recording her. And in the middle of lunch, it's like, can we talk about you wearing fur and what this does?
No.
Well, okay, look.
No, but I like that. Look,
smart,
you paid for the silent
but-
auction. You've got her ear. You can use it
It
that
was
way.
PETA. And honestly, it was kind of fantastic.
Yeah, and then she ordered a rack of ribs.
But
I love that. You've paid for the opportunity to have a conversation.
It's controversial, but it's aligned. This is so dumb. And the problem is, it's now a thing.
Yes.
Remember, they threw paint.
Yeah.
They threw cake at the Mona Lisa.
Yeah.
There were Bocellis that were damaged. I mean, they're doing this now. What is the alignment between art and climate?
Nothing. It gets massive amount of coverage on Twitter and in the media, and that's why they continue to do it. And it is newsworthy when someone tries to destroy a priceless work of art. And that's why they're doing it. But there's no nexus.
It's protected by glass too. So you guys are.
I don't think they want to destroy it. I think they want a news story about climate change, right? I don't think they're looking to destroy it.
I think that these kids were young, and I think
They don't even know.
They don't even know. I don't think they're thinking about it.
Oh.
They just want their message out there. It's gross.
Are we done with him?
Yeah, we can be done with
that. Okay, Kanye. I just want to go over something that we covered yesterday about these anti-Semitic, not just the anti-Semitic comments, but his explanation for the anti-Semitic comments are worse than the initial point.
Way worse. They're like his considered, reasoned opinion at this point.
Considered, reasoned. When you listen to the photographer who first said, "How was the documentary you just saw?" And he said, "It was great." And then stands there and says, "Is there anything else you want to ask me?" He wanted this. He thought about it. He wanted it. He thought about what he was going to say, and he tripled down on anti-Semitism.
At some point, he said, "I'm glad I crossed the line and we can have this dialogue," as if there's a dialogue to be had about the substantive merits of his comments about Jews. It's wild to me. He wants to have a conversation about it. What is there to have?
Well, what he's saying is, I'm not anti-Semitic, but, I do have issues. This is the same sentence, by the way. But I do have issues with the way Hollywood has screwed over black people. I'm not anti-Semitic, but I do have issues with the way that is saying the Jews run Hollywood and they have screwed over black people. That's what he's saying.
Absolutely. There's no other way to read it. We're not reading between lines.
Same thing. Same thing. There is an if you guys haven't heard of this, I am telling you, there is I think a lot of people have heard of it. Ken Burns, his new documentary, The U.S. and the Holocaust. And it's on PBS, and it is absolutely sensational. I'm a Jew. I have studied this. I've read about Nazi Germany. I've spent a lot of time on this. I didn't know 3/4 of the things in this documentary. The way the United States created scapegoats with Jews, and it is shocking. I mean, it is shocking, and it all brings this back. I mean, Kanye is the 2022 version of a lot of the things that happened in the 1940s, things that were said, and it just kind of enraged me when I listened to this.
Yeah, I mean, I think these kinds of comments are extremely dangerous for a reason. I mean, when someone like Kanye West, who has a huge platform, says this, it sort of empowers and gives license to this kind of thought as somewhat legitimate, even though Kanye has gone on so many rants and sort of marginalized himself at this point in terms of what he's able to add to the conversation. There are going to be people who like latch onto this and say, yeah, the Jews control Hollywood and they're screwing over black people.
And this no longer feels like a rant. It's so dark and different. And
Really
even
dark.
to the point that we now know that Kim has zero communication with Kanye. And that has never happened in their entire history together, no matter his ups, his downs. She's always still there. They always text, but she's gone.
Well, what is she going to do at this point? She can't control the guy. And if she tries, she'll get blasted by him. So what does she do? And this is for the rest of her life. Can I just make one other point? And I'm sorry for being so gratuitous here, but that U.S. That Ken Burns show documentary just really triggered me. When I was in high school, Charles Lindbergh was written about in history books and in my school as this incredible hero. And I remember I actually went, I hate myself for this, to Charles Lindbergh's grave in Maui, on the road to Hannah. It's at the very end. He was a fucking Nazi.
Yeah.
And, well, I mean, obviously I know it now. But
it's the history you were taught.
But
what were you supposed to think? They taught that he was a hero. He's a Time man of the Year.
Let me tell you why it pisses me off so much. Because I was a kid.
Yeah.
He said all this stuff in huge rallies that were covered on radio and newspapers. He was the antithesis. He was the counterpoint to Franklin Roosevelt, who was basically saying, you cannot do this. You can't stereotype Jews. You can't close the borders this way when people are getting murdered by the millions. And Lindbergh was head of this America First committee. He was a raving Nazi. And so it wasn't like secret and people didn't know. Everybody knew, yet the history books wrote this. I mean, remember, was it Jimmy Stewart who played him in the movie?
I don't remember.
Where all I remember is there was a fly in the cockpit.
Oh, he was extremely popular. Yeah.
He was one of the great heroes of our time.
Yes.
And that's what I was taught in school.
Yes.
And he was a raving Nazi.
Yeah, not shy about it. Not sort of his
Not
private
shy
views.
about it.
He would go to Madison Square Garden and espouse these things in front of hundreds,
I
thousands
believe
of
he
people.
went to Germany and he had actually thought about moving to Germany, and he was just he was a Nazi.
Yes.
And everybody
Proud,
knew it
through and through.
And yet the history book, I'm sorry for going off in this rant, but I couldn't, I don't know, that documentary was so good and really, spent a little time on Lindbergh, and it's just incredible.
Nobody tell Harvey about Walt Disney.
Yeah. There's some troubles in Henry Ford.
I know. Well, they got
a lot of sympathizers.
By the way, they got
a lot of sympathizers.
a lot of sympathizers,
Yep.
and it hasn't stopped. Okay. What a badass Nancy Pelosi is. What a badass. I like this.
Yeah. So this new video has come out from the day of the insurrection where Nancy Pelosi's in her office and she's looking out of the window with some of her advisors out over the crowd that is advancing. And, there's discussion about whether Trump will actually march on the Capitol himself. And Nancy Pelosi says she hopes he does so she can punch him out, go to jail, and feel so good about herself. And it really is just like sort of who she is. She doesn't seem to be putting on a performance. She, there's cameras there, but she really dislikes him.
It was,
and I feel like she might have thrown a punch.
It was authentic.
I agree. I'm ordinarily inclined to say, oh, she's putting on a show, and he's obviously not going to show up. But the emotion is so raw. They were just fed up with
when
this
you
guy's
watched
antics at this point.
First of all, when are they going to release all this stuff?
Yeah.
How is this stuff
don't
coming
know.
out in these dribs and
Pieces.
drabs?
I agree.
But, over the last day or so, you see her walking down hallways and corridors and rooms, and she's just pissed off. And in the middle of this frightening episode, she is saying, we have got to have this vote today. How are we going to... And she was so focused and fearless.
Yeah.
I thought it was awesome.
It was also interesting to see how everybody was united that she was on the phone with Mike Pence, and the only person who was being a big old baby was Donald Trump. Everyone else, Mitch McConnell was there. She was saying that she had just.
Well, I
loved
loved.
Mitch.
Schumer did this thing. I forgot who he was talking to. He was talking to somebody in the administration, and he was saying, "Get Donald Trump to say something," and the person wouldn't give a clear answer, and he said, "God damn you!" And it was something like that, and he was really pissed.
Yes. If she
I
threw a
loved
punch,
it.
let me ask you a question. This is obviously a fun video. Donald Trump never got punched by Nancy, but what if he had? Would you be sad, or would it sad about the moment that this country has come to, where the Speaker of the House throws a punch at the President of the United States? Would it be a moment of triumph? Would it be a moment of division in the country? I'm sort of trying to walk, sort of think through what that would look like for America.
Half the country would say, I don't care how old she is, make her president. And half the country would say prosecutor.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. And that's sort of the sad state of affairs. I kind of wish it would have happened. I kind of wish I would have seen this.
I don't know if he would ever admit it though.
If he got punched
if
without cameras
little
around?
tiny Nancy Pelosi came and socked him in the face.
It didn't hurt. It didn't hurt.
Absolutely. Pushing his jaw out. Yeah.
Okay. And finally, this is a really tough one. So they are not going to give the Parkland killer the death penalty. It's interesting because the juror who said no to that, the woman who said that the death penalty is not on the table for her because it had to be unanimous, said that she talked to the Associated Press. She said, I did not go into this opposed to the death penalty in principle, but when I listened to the mitigating factors, the fact that he was raped as a kid, that he was he was the victim of fetal alcohol syndrome and all, that she felt that the mitigating factors outweighed the aggravating factors, and the families are outraged at this.
They're absolutely outraged. I'm from Florida, and it's a state with the death penalty. When I was growing up, and you knew remember Old Sparky? There were stories about our electric chair. People in Florida, it's sort of foreign to people in California. They really believe in the death penalty as the ultimate punishment. When you have someone like Nikolas Cruz, you'll always get mitigating factors. Even Jeffrey Dahmer had a case of mitigating factors.
Well, by the way, fetal alcohol syndrome is not a rare occurrence.
It's not.
I mean,
No.
And
Your entire generation, or
they all drank
my
and
mom
smoked.
drank and smoked when she was pregnant. Look at me.
Yeah. And they everyone endures some trauma in their life, and the outrage to me feels real and somewhat justified. If you have the death penalty as an available punishment in your state, how can a person like Nikolas Cruz not get the death penalty? That's the outrage that you're sort of hearing is. Then let's abolish it. But in these circumstances,
Well, that's by the way, that's exactly what the parents said.
Yeah, you can't not apply it when there's a mass murderer at a high school who takes down 17 people.
So it's funny because I agree with you, and when you listen to the parents, and I started thinking about this last night, it really got watching them.
It's gut wrenching.
That really Nikolas Cruz, this was a complete victory for him because Nikolas Cruz was not convicted. He pled guilty. So he pled guilty, and really he calculated by pleading guilty, I'm not going to have a trial. By pleading guilty, there are going to be two things on the table, and that's why I'm pleading guilty, and my end game is life without parole. He got it. He won.
Yes.
Nikolas Cruz won. And these families that lost their kids, they just lost.
You're so right, because when you plead guilty, you short circuit the presentation of the
Right.
evidence, and the presentation would have been so powerful.
This was a victory for him.
so there's nothing. It's done
it's over.
forever.
It's over. Over.
Ugh.
It's over.
Yeah.
And look, you may be against the death penalty, And if you are, there are states that say that they will not enforce the death penalty. This state says they will. And then the question, like one of the parents said, if not here, when?
Yes.
Yeah.
And and yet, and on the other side, what's been interesting in my legal career is watching a lot of these cases, where you see, like, I don't know, Charles Manson. When you look at somebody like Charles Manson, is he insane?
I don't know.
What do you think? I mean, you've read it.
Charles Manson is sort of the definition of insanity.
Yet
he carved swastikas in his head.
Yet he got the death penalty.
Yeah.
Now, it was converted because it was ruled unconstitutional and all. But there are a lot of people who say that when the crime becomes especially heinous and somebody really is insane, sometimes people will ignore the insanity and impose the death penalty.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people feel in this case it was the opposite, where he wasn't insane, but they somehow took the leap.
Yeah, I want to say one more thing about this. One of the family members said, they're outraged by this. The jury got it all wrong, and they hope that people in prison take care of him, meaning they hope that he's murdered in prison.
Yeah.
That's a bad thing. If you have the death penalty,
But you can.
it brings out the ugliness in people to say, like, I want him to be murdered. Jeffrey Dahmer was beat to death with a barbell.
Derek, cut him a break.
I understand it, but
Cut
that's
him a
why we should
break.
apply the death penalty so that he is killed in a humane fashion. It brings out the worst in the victims as well. To want this, I agree. Give him a break.
I want to ask you a question.
Yes.
Let's say Nikolas Cruz. How old was he when he did it? 17?
17, I believe.
Okay. Let's say Nikolas Cruz, when he did it, was 40.
Mm-hmm.
Same result?
No.
Right.
Yeah.
What's the difference? Age.
Yeah.
It's that
Age.
they didn't. That I think this woman, and I don't know. Look, I may be wrong. I'm just speculating. But I would think his age created more sympathy than if it were a 40-year-old dude who did something like this. He would have gotten the death
I
penalty.
agree completely.
And that doesn't make a lot of sense, does
Yeah,
it?
because you're saying if the crime were the same, the level of premeditation, the planning that went into
Going
it, if that
in,
were a
coming out, going back in. I know.
If a 40-year-old does it, it reads very differently to people. So it's extraordinarily
Will
sad.
he
the whole
be
thing.
in solitary confinement?
I don't know what they're going to do with him.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know what they're going to do.
When
They
they
haven't
put
said.
Dahmer and Gem Pop, he got killed.
By the way, he hasn't been formally sentenced yet. That's the judge's decision, but he will be sentenced to life without parole because death penalty is now off the table.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, everybody, have a good weekend. We will see you Monday.